Good morning. It's Sunday, January 15th, and the U.S. is about to face a major crisis. Now, I am no economist. I have a degree in accounting, and I practiced very little accounting over my entire career. But Janet Yellin, the Secretary of the Treasury, has sent a letter to Congress explaining to them that we in the United States will reach our debt limit on Thursday, January 19th. That's only a couple of days away. And I have it marked on my calendar, not because of the debt limit, but because I have to go see the dentist. In any event, let me explain to you what the debt limit really is. So the debt limit, or sometimes it's called the debt ceiling, is a cap on the total amount of money that the U.S. federal government is authorized to borrow versus U.S. Treasury securities or bills or savings bonds, any of those actions that is used to fulfill its financial obligation. So that means our borrowing power is limited. And because the United States runs on budget deficits, it must borrow huge sums of money to pay its bills. And of course that puts us in a tenuous position because you have to pay back the money that you borrow. So if you continually keep borrowing, then the debt limit goes up and up and up, and it has to go up and up and up. And I'm against really all of this up and up and up business, but we have to take a stand at some point and figure out how to manage our finances. Now, one of the major causes of being in this particular situation is because Congress did certain things over the past maybe 10 years or so, and it started with Obama. They wouldn't let him raise the debt ceiling. And then they allowed President Trump to increase our deficit by 40% in his 4 years in term. So Congress, which fights this limit all the time, is partly to blame for the situation we are in. And let's not ignore the fact that we had a tax cut which limited the amount of money that was being poured into the U.S. coffers. So this is a terribly, terribly dangerous situation that we have put ourselves in. We run the risk if we go past the debt limit at some point in time, and we will have about 6 months leeway to figure this thing out. But we run the risk of ruining our financial image to the rest of the world. We cannot afford to be looked at as a second-class nation, because that will cost us a lot more money in the long term. And on Monday, the House Republicans adopted new rules governing legislation that make it more difficult to raise the debt limit. And they wanted to strengthen the Republicans' ability to demand that any increase be accompanied by spending cuts. Well, if you have spending cuts, you really don't need to have an increase, in my mind. And the Senate Republicans have also insisted that the increases to the debt limit should be tied to structural spending reform. Now, I am assuming that means infrastructure, but I am not really sure what structural spending reform really means. But nowhere in this insidious situation have the Republicans stepped up to the plate and said, we really never should have let that tax cut go through. Because that tax cut has limited the amounts of money that the U.S. was collecting. And that money could have been used to reduce the debt limit. To reduce not the debt limit, but the deficit. So they allowed us to get into this situation. And nowhere in these conversations has the fact that there are so many exemptions in our tax laws that create the inability to raise enough money. Nobody in Congress is talking about that, and certainly not the Republicans. So if they're not talking about that, what are they talking about? Well, they're talking about the usual bullshit. They're demanding cuts in Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. And if they don't get what they want, they're willing to tank the American economy. They're willing to destroy a strong job market and jack up interest rates and inflation. That's what the Republicans are looking to do. They're not looking for a solution that is correct. They're looking for a solution that fits their twisted value. And President Biden has gone on record to say that he will not negotiate over the debt limit. He said Congress must vote to raise it with no strings attached. We'll see how that goes over. It won't go over well. So I believe that there will be a clash between Congress and the President, and that the debt limit will probably be breached. And if that occurs, that would result in the United States defaulting on its debt for the first time. We have never defaulted on our debt any time in our history. So we are sitting on the edge of a major catastrophe here. And unfortunately, the only way to avoid this situation right now is in a bipartisan result from the Congress, where the Democrats and the Republicans come together and vote to increase the debt ceiling. Getting a bill like that could take months in the shape of this Congress, because the first thing they did when they came into office is start investigating Biden and the classified documents that were found. They have formed committees to seek revenge on the Democrats because of the actions that the J6 committee took over the insurrection. So this Congress is not necessarily interested in the good of the country. They are interested in getting even. And so when I look at this picture, I see a Congress that could take weeks or months to produce a bill that would alleviate the debt ceiling problem. A bill which Biden could sign into law. A bill which, if not produced, will almost certainly end up with the U.S. defaulting for the first time. And believe me, a U.S. default is worse than anything that Congress could imagine with respect to all the investigations that they're putting into place. So if these lawmakers misjudge the date when Treasury can no longer pay their bills and futz around with these other things that are really secondary issues now, this country will be in deep doo-doo. We cannot afford to default. We cannot even afford to create the image of a possible default. So Congress has to get its act together and act swiftly on the debt limit. And so I leave you with that terrible story this morning. See you tomorrow. Bye.